So she still feels that she's their mother.
Oh yeah,
Is it the case that the hen thinks that they're wee chickens?
that's correct.
Or do the wee ducks think they're wee chickens?
No, I think the ducks know who they are. They're heading for the water.
You
but
think
the hen,
so?
I think they do. Aye.
And this fella says to me, he says, oh, he says, do you think that the eagle would have prevailed in Donegal at that time? And I was saying to myself, well, whatever, but the eagle, if we want to look into the story, you get a lot of faults.
There's lots of past parts of the story that are harder to swallow than the eagle. Did you know that, Willie? The Latin prayers work for the weather.
He has to believe me.
Have you listened to him? Have you listened to him? You'd listen to a lot.
You still don't believe me.
Wee bit of ginger in that.
There is, yes. Mixed spice, yeah.
Absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
Look at all those people opening out my throat out there.
I know, they're waiting to get, they can't wait to get in. Beautiful.
Was I not doing exactly the same thing? If long ago the people who first named the place I'm in today had stood where I'm standing in order to do so, then the chances are they'd have named it after a bird. Because I'm up here in the realm of the ravens and the soaring golden eagles. And looking down, I can see the kind of far-off things those winged creatures must take for granted. But those distant namers were gazing upward at this place from the ground below, and described the kind of animal that came to mind. A creature whose inability to fly is legendary. Welcome to Muckish Mountain in the north of County Donegal. Muckish is a reference in the Irish language to the mountain's resemblance to a pig's back. In metric terms, it stands at a devilish 666 metres. But that translates to a much more benign 2,185 feet in old money. It's the sheer bulk and distinctive shape of Muckish that makes it such an iconic aspect of Donegal's landscape, and it's been the dominant feature on the horizon of the people who've lived in its shadow for thousands of years. In the nearby village of Creeslough, that horizon has been recreated as a place of worship by the celebrated architect Liam McCormick, whose gleaming homage to the mountain's outline is also perhaps a reflection of the role it has played in the lives and indeed the livelihoods of the local population. Yes, for all its wild and remote and at times forbidding air, Muckish is a people mountain. And I'm not just referring to the shepherds, turf cutters and ramblers who frequent its gentler slopes. Nowadays, a winding laneway will bring you well nigh above the cloud line. Still some distance from the summit, mind you, but up to the point where, remarkably, stone cutters from ancient times have been at work, leaving themselves apparently an unimaginably difficult task. How to get this millstone they had cut down what would have been a trackless mountainside to where it could be used to grind the corn that had been cut at Creeslough. Manus McFadden doesn't claim to have the solution to that problem, but he is, as far as he knows, the first person from the modern age to find this stone. Have you any idea at all, or have archaeologists been able to tell you how old this is, when this was done?
No. If you look at how much the bog is formed up on it, and there's even lichen growing.
But I think that age there is broken. Do you see here?
It is. Well, that's the reason. This one here was dressed on the rock, and he was just ready to take it off, and it broke.
You can just imagine the annoyance of that man whenever it broke on him at the
that's right. You can imagine the annoyance, but you can imagine now if we had this dressed, taking it.
Well, that's the next question I was going to ask you. I mean, we came up and we have the benefit of motorised transport for a good bit of the journey.
For further.
But it's very rough terrain to even get over that wee stream to get to here. How would they do it?
How would they do that? I mean, you can say horse and cart. Well, it wouldn't be easy getting a horse and cart in, you know. And why? Because maybe it's not that unusual a stone.
Yeah.
That there's bound to be stuff closer
near hand
to the coast or whatever, you know.
Yeah. Without the benefit of expert archaeological opinion, the millstone, if indeed that was what it was intended to be, remains a mystery to Manus. And so, as we usually do in this part of the world, when we seek an explanation for the inexplicable, we revert to St. Columkill. For it was in searching for something connected to the saint that Manus came upon the stone in the first place.
We were cutting turf just on down the hill there.
Yeah.
And myself and a neighbour man. And I just said to him, what's in the valley over there, you know? Yeah. Oh, he says, that's the spot. He says that St. Columkill cut the cross for Rye. Now, the stone cross is in the church in Rye, 20 foot tall, so it is, and about 7 or 8 foot wide. The story goes that St. Columkill wanted to go to Torry to bring Christianity to Torry, and as supposed to impress them, he wanted a cross. So the story goes that he came up onto the base of Muckish and he cut a big stone cross, and must have huckstered it and slipped it down through the bog. How, we don't know, but it's there anyway.
Having somehow slipped the massive cross, as Manus puts it, as far as the River Rye, and just as they were about to embark for Tory Island, Columkill discovered that he had left his Bible back on Muckish. A young acolyte, hoping to gain favour, offered to go back and get it for him, and Columkill promised to grant him anything in his power if he succeeded.
So your boy heads back up anyhow to Muckish, and at Donegal opened from the heavens.
Yes.
It poured on him, and he was post thinking to himself, this is a waste of time because the Bible will be soaked. When he got up to the spot to cut the cross, there was this big eagle with his wings spread out over the Bible, and the Bible was bone dry. So when your man picks up the Bible and he heads back to Columkill, he was delighted to get the Bible back, and he says, what's your wish? And your man said, my wish is that we leave this cross. He says, we're far enough with it. He says, we'll leave the cross here, he says, and we'll build a church here, he says,
Right.
and that'll do me.
And that's as far as it got to Tory.
That's how the cross got
That's
to be
why,
where it
that's
is.
why there's still pagans out in Tory to this very day.
Oh, that's sure. Better not say that.
Never got the cross as far as that.
You wasn't
We don't
say
mean
that.
that, we don't mean that. Okay, right. It's hard to believe that something so massive and dominant in the landscape can simply disappear from view. But the sky often collapses around Muckish, and the wind and the rain drive in off the Atlantic, ferocious and unrelenting. And the mountain can't be seen from anywhere, often for days at a time. When that happens, this becomes a truly harsh and inhospitable environment, possibly one of the last places on Earth you'd think of locating a major industry. Yet that is precisely what happened here. They came up here to brave the elements and the hardships in pursuit of this stuff. No, it's not gold or precious stones. It is in fact one of the commonest materials to be found on Earth: silica.
The sand resulting from the crushing of such rock has been used for thousands of years to produce one of the most useful materials ever discovered by man: glass. And the silica to be found at the top of Muckish has long been reputed to be of the finest quality, said to produce the second best optical sand in the world. There's even a rumour that the Romans sought it out. The trouble is, and the trouble has always been of course, that it's up here, with all the attendant problems of access and transport that the location entails. There had been sporadic attempts to quarry it, which never amounted to much. But when the Second World War broke out, and the usual sources of glass-making materials in England, France and Belgium all had to close, an Irish industrialist called Lawrence O'Toole launched a major quarrying industry at Muckish, and at one stage was sending a weekly shipload of the stuff to Liverpool from the pier which had been specially built for the purpose at Ards-on-Sheephaven Bay. Eamon McFadden is a journalist by trade, but he's also one of a growing band of local historians who've taken a renewed interest in the now defunct industry which, back in the 40s and 50s, provided much needed employment in this area.
It's like almost like an abandoned ghost town almost up here, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah,
'cause you've got all these big rusting hoppers sitting over here, and all around here there would have been something up to what, 100 men working at one stage.
Yeah, there've been certainly 80 plus. Even in fact, at busy production times, maybe even more than 100. You know,
Yeah.
and you can imagine about 80 of those would go to the top.
Right up to the very top.
Well, it's just a few metres shy of the top where the quarry platform is up there.
Yeah.
And they would just walk up the miners' path up here every morning. They would get here about 8:30. They were given sort of 45 minutes to walk up. They were given 15 minutes break when they got to the top.
They get their breath back?
They get their breath back.
Wow.
And then they had to go at it then for a good 10-hour day.
And these would have been men, even if they lived fairly handy. You're still talking about miles away from the base of Muckish, really, in most cases.
Yeah,
not the case.
the lorries that transported the sand from here down to Ards Pier used to do a loop, if you like, of the area in the morning, and there was a place where you could get picked up and jump in the back of the lorry, and away you came up here. But some of the men would have had to maybe travel maybe 4 or 5 miles, either by foot or by bicycle, just to get the pickup, and then they had to walk the mountain, and then they had to do their day's work and come back, take it all the way back home, get their dinner, I'm sure, and I'm sure they had a weary head by the time they got back.
Well, I'm sure of it. I mean, and the other thing I'd heard as well, and I don't know if this is true or not, that whenever it rained,
which it never does in
No,
Muckish,
never up here, no.
which it probably did at least 50% of the time.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was like in the winter time up here. When it rained, they still came to work, and they sat in the hut, and they did no work, but they got no pay.
No, no pay, no pay. They only paid for what they quarried, and when they were out quarrying, they got pay. It was a thing that was actually raised in the Irish Dáil at the time.
Right.
There an Intermittent Unemployment Act, which was known as wet time.
Right.
And the workers in Muckish were used as the example to say that they should allow this, but it actually was rejected, so the boys never really got to see the benefit of it.
It strikes me, Eamon, looking around here now, as a kind of an unstable place. What I'm asking, was it a dangerous job in that sense? Because they were also working with gelignite as well.
That was one of the biggest dangers they had. Now, as you say, it's a dangerous enough place at the best of times, but when you put into the mix of maybe a rather lax health and safety laws of that era, and there's been a few incidents of where they were having their tea one time and they had all the gelignite stented in to explode, had their tea break and went in, and somebody accidentally nudged the plunger, and the next thing the whole blew up side of the hell out on top of them, and it dented, it almost collapsed the hut they were in, but that actually saved them.
Actually, a good job they're having their tea break.
Well, it was.
Right. So it was very, very tough work, but I mean, the men who worked here were probably very glad to have jobs in the first place, I would imagine, because it was either that or probably emigrate somewhere else. So
That was it. There was either that or maybe there's a wee bit of subsistence farming, but the land, as you can see, wouldn't be maybe too suitable to make a decent, sustainable living, really. Yeah. So this wee bit of income over the years would always been very welcome, although it would have been a very hard one.
The reopening of the English and continental sources of silica after the Second World War made the hard-won Muckish product more and more uneconomical, and in 1954 the quarrying ceased completely, leaving heaven knows how many tons of the second-best optical sand on earth locked inside the mountain. When we come back, a glimpse into some of that subsistence farming Eamon referred to as we gather to cut the corn at Creeslough. Are they delicate kind of things?
Oh, there, yeah.
Right.
One of the problems was that when you'd have it lit at night, the moth will go for the light and put a hole in it, and then you get the flame coming out. You get a hissy noise out of it, you know.
Gerald Duffy is about to shed some light on his own past life and on the recent history of Kildare and Carnamary, two mountainy townlands on intimate terms with Muckish that were strangers to electricity until 1969. So one of Gerald's chores after school each day was to take the gooseneck tilly lamp down from its perch on the wall and attempt to dispel the gathering gloom with the aid of paraffin oil, methylated spirits and a box of matches. Right. Oh, there you are. It wasn't hard to light.
You just put
it back over there.
Yeah.
On the tongs.
Yeah.
Very good. And that's...
So we'll leave it for a minute.
So that's now heating the mantle.
That's heating. We'll pump it now.
Right.
To get the oil up.
Right.
This here actually lets the oil up. The oil's still here at the minute.
Right.
When you screw this black switch here, it lets the oil up. And it should ignite.
There we go.
Like we wait to settle down.
Hear that wee hiss?
Yeah, and it'll. You'll have a bit of a flame. It'll take a wee bit.
It strikes me, Gerald, these were dangerous enough things in the wrong hands, weren't they? Well, look at that. Isn't that so light, isn't it?
So then you take off the tongs.
We're finished with that.
Blow them out.
And that's
that was the light that we would have had.
And I would imagine in a dark room, which this isn't, that would create great light.
It was a great light.
You could read by that. You could sew by that. You could do all sorts of intricate things close up. Gerald and I are in the kitchen of his modern house overlooking this beautiful garden in Carnamary. No need for tilly lamps these days, unless it's to remind him of the times back in the 50s and 60s when his family, like all the others in this area, grew their own food, produced their own eggs and milk, churned their own butter, and cut their own turf across from Crocketee, the mountainy neighbour of Muckish that cradles the lake and streams in which Gerald fished for trout as a lad. So you were self-sufficient. I mean, that means you didn't really have to buy groceries on a regular basis.
No,
there were certain things you couldn't get.
No, they came a van round on a Tuesday.
Right.
The cope van, they called it.
The cope van.
And the flowers bought.
Yeah.
The eggs were usually sold to the cope van. All the eggs we saved up. And
eggs were currency, really, weren't they?
They were, yeah. And the bag of flour and probably the tea and the sugar would have been about the only stuff was brought.
Yeah.
And if you're lucky, you got a penny pap. There's a wee
Is that
penny
right? As a
biscuit.
treat?
As a treat, yeah.
Well, I mean, to modern ears, that sounds like, God, it was tough times and so on. But I bet it didn't feel like that to you.
Didn't feel like that at all. No, it was, we didn't know any difference.
Yeah. But the other things that electricity brought you, of course, would have been, well, a fridge, TV, all those kind of.
Yeah,
So you had none of those things at all.
None of those. No.
So how did you while away the dark nights? Then, in other words, did you?
Well, that time you'd had the rakers. You'd had the local neighbours coming in,
Right.
telling the ghost stories and all the stories, and then you'd have houses that you'd go to on certain nights. So
did people visit most nights?
most nights you'd be
Really?
either somebody in the house or you'd be in somebody else's house.
Get away.
And they called it the raking, like.
The raking?
Raking.
Not caling and all
No,
that.
no, raking, they called it.
Right.
And,
Where did that word come from, I wonder?
I don't know. And then you heard all the ghost stories, and everybody was trying to tell a scarier one than the one before. You
And
know.
then you walked home in the dark
In the
sometimes.
dark, yeah.
You were
Well, it
afraid.
was the dark because
Yeah.
there
There was no light or no, any sort.
light. No.
Gerald cherishes childhood memories all the more, I suspect, because in 1974 he had to leave Carnamary to find work in the construction industry like many generations before him, in places like London, Glasgow and Germany. In London he married and raised a family, returning to live here in 1992 when he could afford it, when his eldest child was 9 years old. Among the precious things that he had carried with him on his travels, and which drew him back here, I've no doubt, was the very powerful sense of community solidarity that you'll find in modern-day Carnamary and Kildare. A solidarity born out of shared experience and shared hardships, perhaps, that takes on its most tangible and most joyous expression in the annual Kildare Fair. Every August, McCarry's pub and the fields around it become the epicentre of a communal celebration of heritage, tradition and song.
There's a woman on board who knows Katie by sight. So we talked of old times till they put out the light. I'm to meet the good woman tomorrow on deck. And we'll talk about Katie from here to Quebec. Oh, I know I'm no match for her, no, not the least. With her house and 2 cows and her brother a priest. But the woman declares Kitty's heart's on the sea, while mine's with the reapers in Creeslough the day.
Percy French it was who provided the words, and Mary Lafferty, the beautiful singing voice, for the most apt rendition ever, I imagine, of Cutting the Corn at Creeslough. It's a song about emigration, and this is the recreation of the scene that the emigrant imagines he's missing. And just to be sure that all angles and all generations of emigrants are covered, the corn is cut in a variety of ways, each one more progressive, if not more picturesque, than the one before. Some favour the donkeys for their John Hind postcard qualities, though they do appear to be rather labour-intensive. The Irish draft horse looks like he could do the whole thing on his own if you let him at it, but I suppose you can't beat the tractor for sheer efficiency. This field of corn has been specially grown for the fair, and it's yielded very considerable sums each year for a range of local charities. For those of us with no experience of handling either animals or machinery, there is instruction available on the most labour-intensive method of all. And for those of you who have never done it, let me assure you that there's a lot more to swinging a scythe than merely swinging a scythe. All here agree that Harry Thompson has no match in wielding this instrument. But Willie McKinley here will analyse your swing and tell you what you're doing wrong, even when you think you're doing everything right.
Like a golf swing.
Still no help to me, I'm afraid. Marks out of 10. He's going to be down in Creeslough by the time we stop him. I see he's done that a few times before.
Yeah, he has.
I'm very, very impressed. I think that deserves a round of applause there.
I'll go a wee bit now on it then.
Right, if you're going to try it as well now. So, you see when Harry was doing it, Willie? He cut a broader path than you did.
He did, but he's a bigger man.
He's a bigger man, aye. That's pretty good, mind you. Was I not doing it exactly the same way?
3 out of 10.
What?
All right, you're doing grand.
No comment.
Aye, 3 out of 10.
You serious? I thought I was doing all right. Well,
You were, you're coming around to it.
it's only a demonstration anyway.
Yeah.
I think I did as well as the donkeys.
Well, we'll not class you as a donkey.
Right. I think we'll let some other people at it now.
The old threshing machine wolfs down the harvest in the yard of McCarry's pub. And who knows, maybe some of the golden grain will find its way into the scones that Mary and Teresa make to feed the hungry workers and the hungry lookers-on.
That's right, yeah.
Oh.
No,
It's just getting to the point where it was getting on there for too long, isn't it?
just a wee bit too long,
But
yeah.
it looks beautiful. Are you seriously going to feed all that mob that's out there and out in the field coming back up here? Are you going to be looking? They're going to be looking for tea and scones, aren't they? Yeah?
They're going to be looking for tea and scones. Well, they'll get very little, I think, but anyway, we'll try and give them a wee bit anyway.
They have to work a wee miracle with the loaves and fishes.
That's right, something like that.
Something like that.
But the real harvest here, I'm thinking, are those ties of common purpose, shared experience and shared memories that help to bind this community together.
But it's grand to be you who are taking your time, where they're cutting the corn in Creeslough today.
Well done, John. Well done.